Since the Crabtree pick, the next picks were Bridgewater, Reggie Bush, Connor Barth. Again, that's the auto drafter. Pierre Garcon, Kaepernick, who went before Cam Newton, which is wild. Wow. Cam Newton going to the auto drafter, then Stafford, then Dwayne Allen. So quarterbacks flying off the board at this stage of the draft. Some of these must be backup QBs. Yeah, the Kaepernick drafter was backing up Tannehill, so that just seems like an upside play more than anything else. David Cobb made it to me. I'm going to take him. Nothing too exciting. Again, I don't really love this team as it's shaping up. I think that the start was fine with the wide receivers and AP and Ivory. I really want Todd Gurley to hit with this roster, and that happens in fantasy sometimes. You end up banking on a few select players. In the case of Gurley, I feel good about his prospects of breaking out. Problem is, it's not going to happen right away. We may have to wait a little while, and let's say Peterson is a shell of himself, or Chris Ivory ends up splitting carries with Zach Stacy and Bilal Powell. Then every week I'm trying to scramble to fill that second RB spot while Gurley's still getting up to speed. And by the way, Peterson and Ivory both have the same bye week in week 5, so let's hope David Cobb is good too. Anyway, I've definitely skimped on running backs. It might come back to bite me in the ass. Who knows? The waiver wire can always help. But, it should be a priority to target, running back upside as we finish out this draft. So that's going to be something we got to look for going forward. We'll be back for round 12 in just a second. Stand by. All right, so after the David Cobb pick, the next guys were Heath Miller, Michael Floyd, Sam Bradford, Marcus Wheaton. That's a nice value if he ends up holding that spot as the Steelers' number 2 wide receiver. Marquez Colston, Brian Quick. Quick's another guy I like, especially at this point in the draft. Andre Williams, Dorial Green Beckham, Reuben Randall, and Terrence Williams. So again, people are getting back to drafting wide receivers and running backs. There goes Owen Daniels, the Denver tight end. The fact that he's getting drafted over some of these other tight ends is questionable at best, in my opinion. But people love Peyton Manning's tight ends. And you know what? Peyton Manning loves tight ends too. So, maybe they're right. Who knows? I mentioned taking, running backs with upside. And one thing I want to highlight for, drafters, as they're using these Yahoo and ESPN and CBS, draft widgets, is to use this queue of players. And even if this isn't necessarily the order of guys I want to take, like I'm not going to take all these tight ends in this order, but just to stack them up, put them in the order you like, and look at who's left. And you can kind of look at this in a way like your tiered rankings, where I can see that, okay, of the tight ends left, these are the ones that I'd be comfortable owning as my tight end 1. Rudolph, Ertz, Safarian Jenkins, Vernon Davis, Antonio Gates, Larry Donnell, right? And so I can see as these guys get picked away by other drafters, okay, there are only so many left. And I've done that with the running backs as well. I've put Nile Davis, Kyrie Robinson, Jerick McKinnon, Javorius Allen. All these guys are on my list, guys I'm going to consider going forward through the draft. After Daniels was Brandon Coleman, Doug Baldwin, and Dan Bailey. So it's up to me now, and we can look at the team again that I'm constructing. It's mostly wide receivers, and we might take another one here, but let's look at all the players at the top of the Yahoo rankings. The 2 tight ends I like the most are here, Rudolph and Ertz. Ertz is a guy that seems like he's going to be boom or bust, and the fact that I already have Jordan Matthews makes me not want to take him here. So I do think I could take Rudolph or Safarian Jenkins in this spot. I think I'm going to take another running back in Nile Davis here. This was a guy that Jeff Dumont liked in our the video that we did together, and I do think that he has a lot of talent. He is playing behind Jamal Charles, but it's a nice lottery ticket to have here. One thing to note here is, as the draft continues to play out, is I've really loaded up my bench. Because I haven't taken a kicker or a defense or a tight end yet, all these running backs and wide receivers are starting to add up. Now, I only have 1 bench spot left in this Yahoo League, but it's worth noting that Yahoo does not require you to draft a kicker or a defense. So, this early in the preseason, with a lot of time left before the regular season starts, you can draft the team without a kicker. And then, right before week 1, drop the deadest weight from your bench to pick up a kicker to be ready to start the season. You can even do that with a defense, although I tend to like to get a defense in the draft, if only because I want to find a team that has a good week 1 matchup at the very least. The team I've ended up with the most is the Miami Dolphins, and I will try not to draft them again in this draft video, but I consistently end up with them as my defense, and that might not change. I'll try to highlight a different defense this time around. Anyway, what picks did we miss here? After I took Nile, Marvin Jones, ASJ, Ertz, and Perriman went, so maybe I should have pulled the trigger on a tight end there. Nile Davis, while he is a good talent, he is replaceable in terms of being just a backup to some other running back. D'Angelo Williams kicks off round 13 here. It's an interesting choice. It probably is a handcuff to Le'Veon Bell more than anything else. And we just got sniped on Kyle Rudolph, so that's a bummer. We're kind of in trouble at the tight end position if either of these next two teams takes Vernon Davis, who is truly the last guy I would like to own as my tight end 1. If we look at all the tight ends who are available at this point, there is some upside down here. There's not a lot. Jordan Reed, Josh Hill, not excited about either of those guys. I do think Donnell is a little underrated, but he's also not super exciting either. I mean, Gates is great, and I might take him with a later pick if he comes back to me, just as some Vernon Davis insurance. We can start VD in the first 4 games, and then after Gates comes off his suspension, hopefully he'll be good enough to, take over as the starter or just be a supplemental play to Davis. We can play matchups there. But looking at other players available here, I'm definitely not taking a backup quarterback, although I do like Palmer and Cutler. There are plenty of other guys here that'll serve as my backup QB to Eli. Wide receivers, at this point, there's not a whole lot to differentiate one player from another, so I'm not too concerned about picking one here. Running backs, Halou is an interesting play, but Latavius Murray seems like the real deal, and it may not be as much of a timeshare as some fantasy analysts want that job to be. David Johnson's the other guy I'd consider here, but I am going to take a tight end. I don't want to get sniped on Davis. There are a lot of picks before I come back up, and while Vernon Davis isn't exciting, like I said, he's the last what I feel to be surefire starter among these tight ends that are listed. Gates is an interesting name. I'll keep an eye on him going forward because when you take a bottom of the barrel tight end starter like I did with Vernon Davis, it's not a bad idea to draft a backup tight end, at least in the place of this kicker spot. So we got 3 picks left. We'll get to them when we get to them. Take a break until then. All right, we're back here for round 14. Here's what you missed. Ronnie Hillman, St. Louis defense, Carson Palmer, Roy Halou, Jay Cutler, Darren McFadden, Antonio Gates, Dwayne Bowe, Jonas Gray, Larry Donnell, Philadelphia's defense, and David Johnson. Nice value on David Johnson. I'm scared of that Cardinals backfield, but, in the 14th round, grasp at straws. Anything you can get. With that in mind, we talked earlier about how I have 3 picks left. Basically 2 bench spots in a defense is what I'm looking to grab here. I'm not going to take a backup quarterback. I'm just going to let the waiver wire be my backup or my bench for QBs. Not all these guys are going to be drafted. Bortles, Derek Carr, Alex Smith, even, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Some of these guys are going to be unowned, and we'll be able to pick one up off the waiver wire by the time Eli's bye rolls around in week 11. If Eli gets hurt before then, so be it. We'll scramble, but that's the life of a fantasy player. So again, 2 picks left, non-quarterback. I talked about maybe taking Gates as a backup to Vernon Davis. Now that Gates is gone, there are no tight ends I really want to do that with. Ladarius Green would be the closest, just to see if he can put together a nice run in the first 4 weeks. But even then, you got to worry about what's going to happen with Antonio Gates when he returns. And so I think I'm better served by taking at least one more running back. The guy that I want, I think, is Javorius Allen. Now that Lorenzo Taliaferro has been injured here in the preseason, it looks like Javorius Allen is on track to be the backup to Justin Forsett. And while I am a believer in Forsett this year, you never know. He has a lot of red flags, and getting the backup to him and possibly the goal line back in Allen could be a nice play. So if that's one of my bench spots and the guy I'm going to take right now, we got to figure out what we're going to do with this other pick before we come up here. I could take another wide receiver, just a flyer on somebody. And there are a lot of guys who kind of fit that mold. but we'll get to that, when we come back. I'm going to take Allen here. Other running backs I like, Kyrie Robinson, Jerick McKinnon, we talked about them. Let's see. Chris Polk, again, not a bad value here, if only because we don't know how long Foster is truly going to be out, and someone's going to have to run the ball in Houston for those first few weeks. In fact, he might just be a better pick here than Allen. Yeah, it just seems like too much of a quagmire there between him and Grimes and Blue. You're just guessing if you think that Polk is going to be the guy who wins that job. So yeah, we're going to take Allen. Now the next question. Tight end or wide receiver? I suppose I could take a backup QB. And the guy I like the most out of the available players is definitely Jameis Winston. He's got a really soft schedule. Some nice weapons there in Tampa Bay. He's a nice value if you're going to be a late round quarterback drafter this year. Other guys, Mariota should be interesting. I'm generally down on Andy Dalton. And I meant to talk about this at the top of the draft, but I kind of realized that if I'm so down on Andy Dalton, I need to be a little further down on Jeremy Hill as well. So he slid down my rankings in general, outside of the first round into the second round. And I do think that's still a fair price for Jeremy Hill. I think he's going to be good. But I'm also wondering if maybe I am a little too low on Dalton. We'll see. The Bengals schedule does terrify me. And I do think there's enough quarterback value otherwise to where, a guy like Jameis could be a nice play for someone who waits on quarterback or wants to put together a committee to take care of their league. With that said, wide receivers, looking at guys still available. Cody Latimer would almost be a handcuff to my Emmanuel Sanders pick, and I don't hate that at this stage of the draft. Cecil Shorts is a guy I do think is underrated. He was a very good player for a couple of years there, and I think the main concern with him is quarterback play now that he's in Houston. None of these other names are really jumping out at me as, solid values. And I will admit that because I already have, 3 wide receivers that I believe to be very good, and Jeffrey, Matthews, and Sanders, along with some solid backups in Fitzgerald, Funchess, and Crabtree, I feel less incentivized to take a wide receiver with this pick. So I could take a QB. I could take a defense. Miami's still there, right? But no, we'll wait on that. I think I am going to take a QB. I said I wouldn't, but we'll use this as an opportunity to highlight Jameis. And I think this might be the first time I actually end up with him in any of these drafts. So that's exciting, right? Jameis Winston added to the team. We'll be back in just a moment with the last pick of the draft. And we'll do a little recap after that. Catch you in just a moment. All right, so after Winston, the next picks were the Chiefs defense, Derek Carr, Colts defense, Reggie Wayne, New England's defense, Carolina's defense, Jeff Janis, Jarrett Boykin, Justin Tucker, Phil Dawson, Cody Parkey. Indianapolis' defense was one of the ones I was going to highlight here. I'm still hoping to get Miami's because they're my favorite. But looking at the Colts' schedule to open the season, the Bills at home, the Bills on the road, New York Jets at home, Titans on the road, the Jags at home, and then Houston on the road. That's a nice opening slate. None of those offenses are going to be very good. Not to say that the Colts defense is any great shakes, talent-wise, but that's a nice opening schedule to rack up some fantasy production before you kick them to the curb and pick up somebody else for a better matchup, right? And then we'll look at the Dolphins, who, again, are my, target in every draft. They get Washington, Jacksonville, Buffalo, and the New York Jets to open the year before their Week 5 bye week. One pickup before I come up here. Matt Bryan and Ty Montgomery were taken. There goes Nick Foles, and Miami defense. I just can't quit them. They're my boys. And let's look at the team we ended up with here. Eli Manning at QB, Alshon, Jordan Matthews, Emmanuel Sanders as starting wide receivers, AP and Chris Ivory at running back, Vernon Davis at tight end, Todd Gurley / Larry Fitzgerald as our opening week flex. The rest of the bench is Funchess, Crabtree, David Cobb, Niall Davis, Javorius Allen, Jameis Winston. And then, of course, we have the Miami defense rounding out the lineup. Thinking about which players we're going to cut for a kicker as Yahoo plays another advertisement. It very likely could be one of these running backs, whether it's Davis or Allen. But it could also be Winston. We could, throw him back into the pool, let the waiver wire be our bench for quarterback, as we trust in Eli Manning because we are crazy fantasy owners. Because I'm going to have to drop somebody to get a kicker. I wish this league didn't have kickers, but, most leagues do. and you're going to want to get some amount of production from that spot in your lineup because everyone else in your league will be as well. So closer to week 1, we'll figure out who to drop. Who knows? Maybe, Devin Funchess gets injured, or Crabtree, gets a concussion and he won't be ready for the first 3 weeks of the season or something. And then that'll make the decision on who to cut easier for filling this kicker spot. But yeah, that's it. That's the TFF Reader League. Thank you for watching. Appreciate your time. And be sure to check out the Fake Football to sign up for these leagues yourself. And for a bunch of other great content, rankings, team profiles, all sorts of awesome stuff. As the season gets closer, as week 1 approaches, we're going to have a lot more content, weekly matchup stuff coming up in the regular season. So stay tuned, get excited, and we'll see you at the Fake Football. Thanks again for watching. Have a good day.